leadership, what's the first thing that comes into your mind?
Intelligence.
Intelligence. What else?
The way you process information.
The way you process information. These are two very good responses, but here's the deal. They relate to IQ. But there's another aspect to it, and if you go and if you look at the picture I put up there, IQ is a small part of what the leadership is all about. IQ, EQ, which is emotional intelligence, it's hiding below IQ. We are often focused on IQ and we don't understand what EQ is, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is how you are perceived, how you perceive yourself, how others perceive you, and what your actions do to other people. Now, there are 4 aspects of it, and I'm going to explain it to you with an example of my leader who I focus on and who I try to copy. And it's okay to copy a leader. Alright, go. Now, the first thing that we talk about is self-awareness. And self-awareness, what it is knowing yourself, knowing what you are. I put up a picture that says it's of a cat looking in the mirror and seeing a lion. And what it says, what matters most is how you see yourself. Perfect example. But there's a flaw in that example, and what the flaw is the cat does not see a cat in the mirror. You want to see who you are. That's the first step, understanding what you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And that makes you a great manager, a great person above all. Okay? Now, if you know yourself and if you understand what you are, you can do wonders. Okay? You know what you can do, you know what you cannot do, and that goes a long way throughout your life, throughout your career. Now, the leader I did pick, and his name is Terry. When I came to Kroger World, I never had any idea what I was going to do in retail. It was a very competitive industry where you're fighting for 30 cents to 50 cents a product while you're still making $100,000 a day in sales, or more than that. Now, the first manager I interacted with was Terry, and one thing I noticed about him, he was very honest, he was very direct in his responses, he knew what he wanted out of you, and he will tell you on your face. And one of the things that he did was, first thing he said to me was, do or don't do, there's no crime. Because I said, I'm going to try to get this done. And he said, no, there's no crime. You either do it or you don't do it. He knew what he wanted, and he knew how to get it. And he knew his strengths and he knew his weaknesses. And during his crisis, he always stayed calm. He knew what would trigger his emotions, and he knew how to control them. And that's where we go into management. How you manage yourself. You know your emotions, you know what triggers you, and it's all about controlling yourself. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And in terms of that, Terry always took time to understand what each person was capable of doing, and he used their strengths, and he knew how to use his employees' strength to make the most out of them. That's why the employees were so happy and so motivated to do even when he was not in the store ran smooth. We were the best in the division, which has over 300 stores, and that's because of Mr. Terry, that he had faith in his people, and he knew how to manage his people. And the reason why he was able to manage his people is because he was able to manage himself and his emotions, and not showing any emotions of distress. You want to keep on? Now, another thing that goes, once you have identified what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you can and cannot do, you also got to consider people all around you. You have to know other people. You have to know what they can do for you. If you want to keep on. Now, with Terry, he knew every single employee what they can do. He would never put his employee in a situation where they would fail. And he would never let anyone fail. And he always was willing to listen to you. He would always make time. If you had any personal problems, he would always there to listen and give suggestions. One of his quote was, and if any employee would tell him that, hey, I think I'm gonna fail, the first response that the employee would get is, so you wanna be the first to lose it. And that actually helped a lot of people. The more people I talked to them, the more people who didn't really understand what they were able to do, but just by talking to Terry, they would say, you know what, I can be the president of the company one day because Terry believes in me. If you want to keep going. Now, all this comes together and talks about relationship management. It's how you understand yourself, you understand the other person, you know how to control yourself. You may not be able to control the emotions of the other person, but you can control the relationship you have. You can minimize the risk of what the other person might end up doing. And that's what relationship is. That's what relationship is one of the most important EQ aspects. And here's what I never really realized about TA, that I think he could have done a lot better. Some people would say he was a jerk. Some people actually understood, and he actually took his time with them and actually made them where they are now. He was nice, but sometimes he would come off as a jerk. He would, you know, I think Terry could change his approach to relationship management, and I think he can be one of the best leader that I know. And I remember his quote the second day I was at Kroger. He said, "Is that a long story? Because I'm already bored." It hurted me. I mean, I was hurt listening, but the more I got to know him, I realized that's his style. So I think that's one of the things that where he can work on. And you want to be a leader, these are the 4 things you want to follow, because you can learn everything on the job, but this is what you have to bring to the table. And I appreciate you all's time. Thank you.